Welcome, everyone. Today we are diving into the hidden world of acids and bases, and I bet they're way more common than you think. They're not just stuck in some chemistry lab. Nope, they're right there in the sour tang of your lemonade and hiding in the cleaner under your sink. So let's see how these everyday substances really, truly shape our world. All right, take a look at these. On one side, you've got lemons, bright, sharp, super sour. And on the other, household cleaners. The stuff that gets the tough jobs done. What in the world could they possibly have in common? Well, believe it or not, they perfectly represent the two opposing sides of our topic today, acids and bases.
So, first up, let's start uncovering where these chemicals are in the places we see every single day. Seriously, you might be shocked to find out just how often you're interacting with them.
Just look at how familiar this list is. You know that sour tang in a lemon? Yep, that's citric acid. That sharp bite you get from vinegar? That's acetic acid. And get this, even the fizz and tartness in your favorite soda comes from phosphoric acid. From sour milk to apples, acids are basically the secret ingredients giving so many of our foods that special kick.
Okay, now let's flip the script and look at the other side of the spectrum, the bases. We've got ammonia, a classic and all-purpose cleaners, and the incredibly powerful sodium hydroxide. You might know it as lye. That's what's in drain cleaners. And check this out. Magnesium and aluminum hydroxide are the key ingredients in antacids. So think about it. While acids give food a sour taste, bases are what we use to clean things up or even to fight back against the powerful acid in our own stomachs.
Okay, so we know where to find them, but what's the deal really? What actually makes an acid, well, an acid? Let's break down the properties that define them.
So, acids have 5 key characteristics. First, they have a sour taste. But, and I cannot stress this enough, never ever use taste to test a chemical. It's incredibly dangerous. Okay? Moving on. Second, they change the color of special dyes, which we call indicators. Third, they have a reaction with certain metals that produces hydrogen gas. Fourth, they neutralize bases. And finally, they can conduct electricity when you dissolve them in water.
And this right here perfectly shows that second point about indicators. The classic example is litmus paper. If you take a little strip of blue litmus paper and just dip it into an acid, say vinegar, it will instantly turn red. It's a super simple visual way to confirm, yep, that's an acid. So we've got all these properties we can see and observe, right? But what's happening on a microscopic level? Why do acids turn litmus paper red or taste sour? The secret, as it turns out, is all about the ions.
To really get this, we need to look at a definition from a chemist named Svante Arrhenius. He figured out that an acid is basically any substance that when you dissolve it in water, it produces hydrogen ions. We write those as H+. And on the flip side, you guessed it, an Arrhenius base is any substance that creates hydroxide ions, or OH-, when you dissolve it in water. You can already see how these two are set up to be total opposites.
So let's just pause here for a second, because this is the whole game. It all boils down to what kind of ion gets released in water. Acids release H+ ions, bases release OH- ions. This one simple difference at the molecular level is responsible for every single one of the properties we've talked about, from the sour taste of a lemon to the cleaning power of ammonia. It's all about the ions. But wait, there's another layer to this. It's not just a simple case of acid or not an acid. It's also a question of strength. Because as it turns out, not all acids, or bases for that matter, are created equal.
The key phrase here is completely separate. The strength of an acid is all about how well it breaks apart or ionizes in water. If it separates completely, it just floods the water with ions and becomes a strong electrolyte, which just means it can conduct electricity really well. If it only separates a little bit, well then it's a weak one.
Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine a strong acid is like a sugar cube that dissolves completely in water. It breaks apart into countless individual ions. That makes it a powerful electrolyte. A weak acid, on the other hand, is more like a solid rock, where only a few bits flake off the edges. It only partially breaks apart, so it's a weak electrolyte. Make sense, right? Okay, for our last section, let's take a quick peek at the code that chemists use to talk about all these different substances. Let's figure out how to name them. First up, we have binary acids. This is just a fancy way of saying it's hydrogen plus one other element. And the rule is super simple and logical. You start with the prefix hydro, then you add the root of the other element's name, and you finish it with ic acid. So H in chlorine becomes hydrochloric acid. H in fluorine, hydrofluoric acid. See that pattern? Pretty straightforward. Now for oxyacids, which have hydrogen, oxygen, and a third element, the naming rule here is a little bit different. It's based on the name of something called a polyatomic anion. That's just a group of atoms that act like a single unit, like carbonate or chlorate. So H2CO3, which contains that carbonate anion, becomes carbonic acid, and HClO3, which contains the chlorate anion, becomes chloric acid.
So, we've covered a lot of ground here, from the foods we eat to the chemicals we clean with. We know acids are sour and bases are bitter. We know one releases those H+ ions and the other releases OH- ions. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. What do you think happens when these fundamental opposites attract? What happens when an acid meets a base?